Okay, let's warm up real quick. Let's start with a ring. Edit, matcap gray. And we'll go down to initialize. And we'll hide my OBS screen so I don't get distracted by it. And we're going to take this radius and bump it up. That looks pretty good. So then we're going to say make polymesh 3D so we can sculpt on it, turn on polyframe mode, and off of this we're going to go to subtool, duplicate, and let's go ahead and subdivide this a few times. I'm going to hit Control D, and that's going to go over down here to geometry and subdivide this. So now that we have some resolution on here, I can go through and we can start masking where we want the icing to be, because we're going to make a quick donut. Everybody, thanks for showing up. Andre and George, or Jorg. So we're going to mask right here. And I'll keep an eye out too on YouTube. Make sure YouTube and Twitch. I'm still setting up Discord. I'll get there eventually. There we go. Something like this. Now, if I want to kind of smooth these out, what I can do is I can Control Tap and that'll blur it, and then Control Alt Tap to sharpen it, and that'll kind of give me a smoother transition. And then on here too, I can hit Control W to make this a polygroup, but it's going to be aliased. Instead of doing that, I'm going to go to Edge Loop here and do Edge Loop Mask Border. But first I have to delete lower, and now I get a little bit of a smoother transition here. So I can isolate this, we can delete hidden, and since we have this, we can go ahead and, we could have done an extraction, but what I'm going to do is do a quick Z remesh. We'll do half, adaptive size down to 0, and we'll go ahead and just give this some new geometry. This should be fine, I think. And then on this donut here, I'm going to hit D for dynamic subdivisions here. And now we've got this. If we want to keep, let's lock that down some more. So we're going to Z remesh half again and again, just to get as little geometry as we can. Then we'll Q mesh polygroup all. We'll go ahead and pull this out. And that'll go ahead and be our frosting. Now if I hit D, that'll go ahead and soften that bottom border transition. Of course, if we go into our crease menu and go to crease PG, that'll crease our polygroups, which I don't think we do want. I think this is fine, although we are getting something weird in here. Let's take a look at that. So before I Z remesher left a little sliver right here, so I'm going to switch over to our select lasso. Grab that, invert it, delete hidden, and now we can just pull that out. And then D, that'll work fine. Now, if you did want to play with this edge a little bit more, noticing on this donut that I'm looking at, it looks like if we go here, we'll do Q mesh polygroup all, and we're just going to pull out a little border on here. Actually, if I Q mesh polygroup all and I tap Alt, that'll go ahead and give me a new polygroup, and then I can go back in and hold down Shift just to pull along that surface normal. And then if I want to put like a little ridge on here, oops, I can go to Insert Multiple Edge Loops, Interactive Elevation, and I can like build in a little ridge here, or I can bevel this first, and then I can kind of build in. We'll go to Insert Multiple Edge Loops. I'll build in like a little bump here, so you can drag right and left and then up and down to change the resolution and the bump height, like so. Alternatively, I can also try to do a scale edge loop complete, and we can just scale this in and out. I think that'll be okay. That'll kind of put like a little ridge here. And if we want to get even fancier, I suppose we could also do a crease edge loop complete, and we can just crease that entire edge loop. Now when we hit D, it's going to be a little bit too harsh, so we can go down here to our crease level of, let's say, 1, smooth subdiv of 2, and then that'll go ahead and smooth out after 1 subdivision. It still looks a little bit too much, so I'm going to go to slide edge loop complete. We're just going to slide these things around just a tiny bit just to kind of even that transition. There we go. Looks like it's getting a little icing buildup there along the edge. And we could do the same thing on the inside, but I'm not going to. So we've got that. Now we've got our donut here, and now we just need to populate with some sprinkles. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Video Nomad and the Rindu. We're just kind of warming up right now. And okay, good, we do have Twitch up and running. So we've got that. So for the sprinkles here, I'm going to just sprinkle sprinkles along this top ridge. Now I do want them contained just within the icing. So what we can do is, I'm going to leave this icing alone, but I am going to duplicate this off. Hold down Control Shift, we're just going to isolate this top poly group, and then Geometry Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. And then we can go into NanoMesh. You know what, let's do it this way. Normally what I would do is I would make a capsule and then replace this with the NanoMesh brush, but what I can do is I can use this cube and then edit it later. So let's go ahead and, actually, you know what, before I deleted Hidden, let's Control Shift select this polygroup here, and then do Control Shift S to shrink, and I'm going to shrink it twice, just so I have this amount of area to scatter those sprinkles, or jimmies if you're from Pittsburgh. So we'll go ahead and do Delete Hidden, and I think that'll work. So let's go ahead and with our brush, insert, wait, no, what I'm looking for. So I'm in Z modeler mode here. So if I just go ahead and I hover over a face, we're going to go to Insert, NanoMesh, and we're going to do it on all polygons here. We can start inserting these cubes. Now the cube isn't what I want, but we can change that. So I'm going to go to my NanoMesh properties down here. And over here, the first thing we could do is we can say the show placement, we can turn that off. So that way we won't see our underlying thing here, although it doesn't seem to be. Let me see, solo mode, show placement, edit placement, no, edit mesh. So we can still edit the mesh, but show placement doesn't turn my little thing off. Maybe if we turn polyframe off? No. That's weird. Show placement should get rid of that. Okay, I want to troubleshoot that real quick. So go to cylinder here, make polymesh 3D. Let's go ahead and just, I'm trying to think if we had, no, that should be right. If we take this here, delete hidden, insert nanomesh, all polygons, go to nanomesh properties, show placement. Yeah, so show placement should turn that off. What am I missing here? Nanomesh, show placement. Delete hidden. It's fine. Oh, let's do Shift D to turn off dynamic maybe. Okay, that's weird. So if you have dynamic turned on, show placement doesn't turn off that plane. If you do dynamic off, it does. Yeah, good to know, I guess. Let's go into edit mesh here, and now since I'm in edit mesh mode, I'm going to go into solo so I don't see the donut. So this is what I dragged out on my canvas. Of course, I could have replaced this in any number of ways, but I can just do it in here as well. So how do I want to change this up? Well, first of all, I'm going to go to brush, insert. Let's do insert multi-mesh primitives. Actually, you know what? You can use that one. I'm going to use my custom one here because I'm just going to grab a sphere 8. So I'm going to hit W and then touch the sphere 8, and I'm going to replace that box with this sphere, and I'm going to go ahead and do a unify so it's the same size. And let's go ahead and I'm going to hold down Control, Alt, W, Control drag out, and that'll go ahead and pull this into a capsule. And we can go ahead and do in Z modeler mode again. I'm going to go to Insert Single Edge Loop, hold down Alt. There we go. And if I want to, let's go ahead and stretch this out a little bit more. If I can hit D, you can see that's the shape it's going to make. If I want to contain these edges a little bit more, I can go to Insert Single Edge Loop, and I can put one here and put one here. So now that I've done that, if I go out of Edit Mesh mode, you're going to see all of those cubes have been replaced by this little sprinkle. So I'll go out of solo mode here. And now, of course, we're going to have to play with this. So let's go ahead and rotate. That's the X rotation. We'll say 90. And then Y rotation, doesn't matter. Z rotation, also doesn't matter. I'm just going to crank these up a little bit because what I'm going to do is I'm going to up these variances. Not the X variance, that's going to be a little bit weird, but the Y and Z variances, I can just scatter them like this. And then I'm going to go down here to random distribution and just start piling them on. I can also go up here to size, and we can scale them in and out as needed. I think this will work fine. And once we're happy with that, are we happy with that? There we go. I think that'll work. And now we're going to go down here to inventory. Let's do one to mesh, hold down Control Shift, and we'll go ahead and delete that. So now we have our icing, our donut part, and then our sprinkles here. And our sprinkles, I'm also going to hit D, and I'm also going to go in here to my move brush. And if you go to auto masking and you turn on topological, and you make your brush size 1, you can quickly go through here and just individually move these things out if you have interpenetration issues here, which we do. Not that it's a big deal. I don't think anybody's going to call you out depending on the type of asset you're making. But if you want to be careful, this is where you would do it. Here, here. And you can manually go in and rotate this stuff too if you'd like. Alrighty, something like that. Whew. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. So John says, ZBrush has been buggy lately. I was getting that weird infinity Z-sphere line thing happening again yesterday. I wish there was a way to combat that. Off the top of my head, I don't know that there is. At least I haven't found it. If you guys find it, let me know, because that is kind of, like you said, a pain here. Let's go ahead in this one, and we'll say, make sure that dynamic is turned off. So I'm going to start just hitting Control D to subdivide this, and we're going to go through here. And so that underlying donut's going to be a little lumpy. It's not perfectly glazed or anything. And I'm also, this side line, that crease line that I put in, I do want that kind of like that icing buildup, but I don't want it that regular. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to smooth that out just a little bit in random areas. And then we're going to go through and just kind of lump this thing up just a little bit, like there's some. Now, I could go in and if I was doing this correctly, I would have lumped the donut first and then done the icing on top of that, because I could project those lumps from the actual donut onto the icing. But you know what? Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. So we'll go ahead and you could run some surface noise through this, I suppose. But since these are just big soft lumps, we can just quickly go in with our standard brush and kind of dump it up a little bit. And also, let's get our inflate brush, and I'm just going to kind of drag our inflate brush around this side again, just to kind of uneven this edge a little bit, so it's not so, looks like it's mechanically produced here. All sorts of impurities and whatnot. This wasn't made by a Swedish chef, so it'll be a little bit non-perfect. Watch those dessert making shows where they use the chocolate and stuff and everything's like mirror finish, perfectly geometrically set. And not what I'm going for here. And then we'll move on to the cake here. That's a good idea. Maybe I'll give Homer a shot. Do you think Houdini Quick Start Series would ever be in the scope of your to-do list? Absolutely, I would love to do that. As far as my scope, I have a little whiteboard in this room, and there is things that I'm behind on and things I want to get to, but working a 9-to-5 job and then trying to do that stuff on the side is a little bit trying. I have gotten some of my weekends back, so we'll hopefully there will be some actual worthwhile videos coming out soon. Cool. Oh yeah, I did. I'll get back to Adam today. I need to go back through my emails. I got kind of backlogged this week. When making texture for a gamer, any things newbies need to know when making the UV maps to the asset in terms of how big to make the UV islands on the UV space? I would usually say as big as you can. So when you're doing UVs, I'm just going to kind of sculpt some details on this cake, by the way. So when you're doing UVs, you want to make sure you fill up the 0 to 1 space as much as possible. And then, of course, you want to usually put your UV seams where they're not going to be seen, or where there's a natural seam in your object if you can, like maybe behind a shirt or in a crevice on your armor, or that kind of thing. However, if you want to get fancy, what you can do is you can distribute those UV shells so that if let's say you're doing a weapon and it's a first-person view weapon and you're only going to see the left side of the weapon, you never flip it over or anything. What you can do is you can assign, or you can scale the UVs on this side larger and then on this side smaller so that gets more texel density. Now that's assuming you don't want uniform texel density, which sometimes is better to have. It gets complicated. On props, you can get away with that. On some environment assets, you want, if you're tiling a macro normal through it, or a macro texture, or a tiling texture, or tiling materials through things, uniform texel density is probably a better thing to have than more texel density sometimes. It gets complicated. But generally speaking, if you're just starting out, use as much as that 0 to 1 space as you can. Be smart about where you put your seams, and you should be in good shape. So let's go. How am I going to make this? So here's what I'm making, by the way. That thing right there. So if I want to flake up this dough here, and I'm hitting Control D to get resolution. Let's see if we can't go through our nano mesh. No, we want to do some service. Okay, so now I don't have a real solution for this just yet. How are we going to do this? Let's go to Surface, Noise. So here's our donut. And I'm going to go to Noise Scale, and I'm going to, well, first I'm going to say the Strength. Let's just crank it up just a little bit so I can see it. And then the scale here, I'm going to scale it up. And now let's play with this curve to see if I can't get, let's take this, and I'm going to drag it off and then back on, and then off and then back on. So we're getting kind of flatter transitions between these. And then let's see if we can't, oh boy, I am out of my element. I don't know how I'm going to do this here. So I can, so this one we can keep kind of flat, and then now this one, okay. And then we can play with our scale. Okay, I think I got it. Or maybe something. Okay, and I'm going to clamp this. This is going to be ugly, and I'm going to say at first, but maybe forever. Let's see. I'm trying to get like a flaky bread, and I'm trying to avoid just going in and sculpting it, but that may be what we have to do. So if I say OK, we'll get that result. Now, before I apply this to my mesh, what I'm going to do is, well, first I'm going to apply it to my mesh just to see what result I get. And that's OK. I'm going to hit Control D and then apply that to my mesh here. I suppose that's okay. Now, if I want more control over that, what I can do is I can go up here to Layers, and I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to also go down here to Morph Target, Store Morph Target. So I'm going to say Apply to Mesh, and now I'm going to go up here to my layer, and I can kind of fine tune how much of this I want to have show up. And I can overcrank it, or I can inverse it as well. I think I want to be a little bit subtle with it. So I do this, we'll hit Bake All. And then I'm going to go down here to my Morph Target, and I can hit Switch, and then BMO. Let me turn on my keyboard here. And now we can go through with our Morph Brush, and we can just kind of dial in where we want some of that flake to go, just to kind of break up that surface. And this is more just to get me a random pattern. Now, if I did, you know, we could actually layer this noise. Maybe we'll do that. So I'm going to kind of layer in. Let's go into solo mode here. We'll layer in some of this. Like so. And now I'm going to say, okay, delete morph target, deformation, smooth. And actually, let's do a polish by feature. That'll give us a little bit of a faster result. Maybe not that much. Let's do closed circle. Okay, so now that we have that, okay. Now we're going to go to back to surface noise. And it should have stored our settings. So we'll turn noise back on, and then we'll go into edit. And now I want to move this thing around. Can we do that? Can we offset? Yeah, we can. So I'm going to change my offsets just a bit. And also maybe this noise scale, will scale this one up. Okay. And now if we apply this to mesh, it's a little bit much, but we can always change that. So new layer, morph target, and then apply to mesh. Now you could change your strength too. I just like using this layer system. Also, instead of doing apply to mesh, you can just, let's do this. Let's undo that. So we've got our noise here, and I'm going to say delete our layer, and morph target will delete our morph target. So now instead of applying that as just noise, we're going to do mask by noise. And then, actually, let's turn noise back on. We'll unmask that. Let's do a new layer. No, wait. You're right. I want to do that first. So we're going to go down here to morph target, store a morph target, do noise, mask by noise, and then do a new layer. And now I can just do a deformation inflate. And now we can dial in exactly how much we want. And if you don't want to see your mask, what you can do is go to your mask settings, and we can say turn off view mask. So kind of like in Photoshop, you can do, you know, hide your selections just so you can get a little better view of what you're doing here. And we'll say okay. I think we're fine. And on this one, since we're just sculpting on this, okay, I guess we can dial that in and out too. And if you ever decide, oh, you know what, I wanted to over crank it a little bit, just go down to this bottom one, and then you can under or over crank it as needed. But we'll stay within that range. I think that'll work. So then we'll go ahead and bake all. And then down here to morph target, we'll switch that again. Actually, you know what? Let's not switch it. We'll go to BMO. I'll go into out of solo mode. And now at this one, we can kind of just, if there's anything that's kind of standing out to you. And also it looks like these things come in like striated rings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to morph in kind of a circular pattern around the torus like this, just to kind of build in. And again, I'm not a donut making expert, so it's not like I've got this nice tutorial of how to make the perfect donut. I'm just kind of winging it as we go. So there may be more elegant solutions to this. I'm just trying to kind of get some random noise flaked into this thing before we go into a render. So we've got noise, and then I'm just manipulating this noise just to kind of get that look I'm going for here. Without that icing on, this looks a little bit suspect, but I'm just kind of putting this in where I think it makes sense, where you see it. Now if we're okay with that, we can now delete our morph target, and now we can go into, say, our H-polish brush, and we can just continue. Let's do, oh, we still have our mask turned on. So if we go up here, we can see our view mask, and oh, we still have our mask on. So that was probably why this was not, it was kind of skipping some areas, but I think we're okay. Let's go through here, and we'll just use our H-polish brush to, again, kind of flatten this donut in rings here. And this is where we get into the part of ZBrush that I like to do a lot of procedural stuff if I can. I don't like approaching every problem from the, well, let's just brute force sculpt solution. I try not to do that as much as possible, but sometimes you just gotta get in there and you gotta sculpt. What can I say? Anyway, why are we making donuts? Why not? Hey Hannibal, thanks for showing up. I'm a little bit behind on the comments again already, so if I skip any, I apologize in advance. Ian brings up a good point. You can use mirrored UVs for weapons seen on one side, absolutely. And in fact, that's a good way to keep your texel density up. Is you mirror, well, assuming your object is mirrorable or it's symmetrical across an axis, you can UV one side and then mirror it. And then as long as your engine supports it with your normal maps and stuff, you can have one set of UVs with all that detail, and then it'll be the exact same on the other side. If you want to, I do have some assets, now that you mention it, that you can download and play around with. Let's see if we can't send you some links. So if you go to share.algorithmic and we'll do a Google search for Quixel helmet. There we go. So if you go to dedo samples Quixel, now this one doesn't have any, doesn't have mirrored UVs, but you can see the sci-fi helmet. If you click download, it's going to give you an error. What you need to do is I don't know, their webpage got messed up. Sci-fi helmet, if you right click download and you do save link as, you'll get a dedo SDK helmet in here. So that way you can just download this game asset and you can go and texture it. And I'll send this link to you guys. And all I did was Google Quixel helmet, took me right here. On live or share.algorithmic.com, if you go to meshes, you can go to this GDC FPS female. And the only reason I'm pointing you to these exactly is because these are the ones that I made. You can go download any of these that you want. So you can download this one, and this one does have mirrored UVs on it, like the shoulder pads are mirrored and stuff. Areas where I didn't want to do that is like in the helmet, because if you get up on the helmet, then you notice you have a mirror line right down the middle. Even if it's not visible seam, they'll have wear and tear and stuff that are exactly the same on both sides. To avoid that, you could offset your mirror line over a little bit. But oops, I probably should have. I'll send you this too. We'll go to meshes. You know what? I can link you. I'll just link you to meshes, and you can dig through the meshes and use that. So AlexF says, can I ask a weird question for my portfolio and skills? I say I'm at least a junior level. I work every day to be better. Only done freelance from the last 3 internships. Didn't pay me. Never had the intention of keeping more than anyone. Didn't learn anything because I was more time teaching than actually learning. That's nice of you. Kind of sucks though, like you said. Yeah, no, that would be frustrating. I'm trying to think. Really, I guess I'd have to know what opportunities are in your area, and that doesn't necessarily mean, well, I guess it gets kind of tricky on the hiring side for companies that, for contract work and overseas work might be a little difficult. I'm not an expert in that area by any means, so I'm not going to speak too much on that in particular. But yeah, all you can do is your portfolio is pretty, and if you're doing contract and freelance stuff, your portfolio is basically your representation of you. So that's something you're going to have to keep in tip-top shape. And like you said, constantly improving. And don't be afraid to get rid of old stuff or go back and improve old stuff as you learn new techniques and you develop a better eye to go back. Because I see that even on professional people's websites and even my own. I should certainly go back and cull. I mean, I've got stuff I did in there in college that can definitely go by the wayside. I just need to go get rid of it. So don't be afraid to, go get rid of your old stuff and just keep it maintained and relevant and constantly improving, like you said. I wish I had a better answer for you as far as like a magic answer, but I really don't, unfortunately. Really quickly, I kind of want to, if we use our clay brush here, I can add a clay brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of an alpha on here so we can kind of start building up a little bit of flaky layers. And that focal shift we're going to turn down to -100. And on the stroke here, if we have lazy mouse turned on, which is a lazy radius, I'm going to turn that down to 1, and our lazy step I'm going to turn down a little bit too, so we get nice, smooth, even strokes. Now within this brush, you can also add surface noise to the brush itself. So you know what? Let's do this. Let's go over here to our, let's see if this will even work. It should. I've never done it before, but I don't see why it wouldn't. So we're going to go into edit the surface noise, and we're going to scale this down, and we're going to change the strength, and we're going to say copy, and then I'm going to go into, let's turn off that noise. We're going to go into the brush here, and we're going to paste that surface noise. So if I hit OK on this one, now when I use my clay brush, it should have that surface noise kind of built in to the clay brush. So we can kind of use that as a way to dial in just a little bit of detail as well. And I can always go back in here and edit, and we can like change that scale. And let's get some more on the inside here. And again, I'm just doing those concentric rings because on my reference, it is kind of, it puts that noise in these kind of ring-like states here. And some of it's got some heavier flakes than others. And then once we're done with that, I can go ahead and turn off surface noise, get rid of that alpha, put that focus shift back to 0. I don't like messing with my regular brushes, so what I'll usually do is like my standard brush, I'll clone it off first, and then I'll do all sorts of zany stuff with it. And we could do the same thing with H-polish and adding noise to that, but I think we'll be okay. Get rid of some of this artifacting here. Sorry I'm spending so much time on this noise, but okay, I think that'll work. So let's do a little bit of poly painting after I answer some questions. Sorry, and again, apologize in advance if I miss anything. Looking for any old videos, couldn't find it. Do you remember the series of video where you make your tutorial on fishnets? Yeah. So what you can do, and hopefully this will work, what you can do is you can go to my videos here. If you're ever lost, and if I did it correctly, you can type in fishnet into my video section, and that'll give you a big old fat internal server error. But you can see it did actually go to the fishnet area if you go hit back, and then it's fishnets, micromesh, fishnets, nanomesh. Where you can find that, and I know it's a stupid place for me to put it, is I will link you to Lumi questions, and then down here it's that last two. So what I can do is I can say Lumi questions, view full playlist. I'll link you to this playlist, and it's 6 and 7 in that playlist. AK Chang asks, at what ZBrush skill level do you think it's enough to teach ZBrush? I mean, for me, I have to be at a skill level. If I teach something, I just want to be I just need to be just enough better than my students so that they can go, oh wow, we're learning a lot from this teacher and he knows what he's talking about. Ideally, you don't start teaching ZBrush to students and have them go like, or call you out on like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing it like this? Why don't you do this? Or you don't have answers to questions about ZBrush that they can find else. Well, I mean, it's okay to not know everything about ZBrush. I don't know everything about ZBrush. In fact, I use a fairly small percentage of ZBrush on a daily basis. I used to know a lot of it, and then if I don't use a feature for very long. It tends to kind of leak out of my head. But, I mean, you don't have to know very much about ZBrush at all to teach it. I know, well, and especially if you're doing like a project-based one where it's like, oh, we're going to use ZBrush to do this thing that I do at work all day, and you'll use 3 things in ZBrush. And it's like basically the clay brush and masking. And you can get very good results with these just using the clay brush and masking. And I've seen tutorials where, and these aren't tutorials on just, you know, random kind of hobbyist stuff. This is like the best and the best of the best in this industry, and their tutorials are basically, hey, here's my reference, here's the clay brush, and I'm going to do this for 6 straight hours. And that's how you use ZBrush. Now, that is having to use ZBrush in a very specific way, and obviously they don't have to know that much about ZBrush or different solutions to a problem they may be approaching, but you can still teach ZBrush. You can also teach ZBrush without knowing too much, but again, it's more about your audience and what they expect out of you and what they expect out of your class. And if you're doing anything specialized, all you have to know is just that little part. I do that a lot. In fact, the Houdini stuff that I showed is pretty much everything I know about Houdini at this point. Like I would love to do an intro to Houdini thing, but I have to learn it first. So might be a while. All right, I think we've got a pretty good cake donut going on in here. So let's go ahead and, I'm looking at this, let's go ahead and poly paint this up. So first, let's switch over to Skin Shader 4. And if I want to paint this, well, you know what, we'll just eyeball it. I can bring this in as a texture image. You know what? Maybe we shouldn't. Okay, let's do this. Let me screenshot this. And if you guys don't use GreenShot, it's a pretty good program. I like it. I'm going to save this on my desktop here. Call this, I'll save it as a JPEG. And then now we're going to go to Texture, Import, Desktop, Donut, Texture, select it, add it, and then we'll go ahead and scale this down, and we'll stick it over in the corner. And for reference, what I like to do, you can sample from this, I think, but to make this a little bit easier, what I'm going to do, a little more controllable, I should say. I'm going to take a polyplane in here, go into edit mode, make it a polymesh 3D, hit Control D until I get up to about 1,000,000 polygons, and then do Shift D, or Shift Z, sorry, to bring this image back. And then I'm going to go in here with my standard brush with RGB turned on, and I'm just going to paint our donut reference right on this thing. So now that I have this, I can just use this plane to sample from. Let's try to go into flat color. Okay, that'll give me a little bit more accurate color representation. And then I'm going to go out of edit mode. I'm going to grab my donut again. I'm going to drag it out, turn on Skin Shader 4, and now I can just sample from this image. So we have this color. Let's go ahead and drag from this color onto this plane, and we can just pick from the local color, which is going to be right along that halftone there, and we can do Control-Alt-F as my color fill object. And let's fill it with, we'll give it a toy plastic, and then we'll go into our materials here, modifiers, and then the specular curve, I'm gonna make it just a little broader. And then for this donut here, I think this donut we're gonna have to color up. So now for these sprinkles, what I can do is I go into auto groups, polygroups, auto groups, and then, you know, in order, well, you know what, this is vertex color, so we can do this. We can go down here to our, we don't need a whole lot of detail. So we're gonna go down here to poly paint, and we're gonna do poly paint from polygroups. Now when we turn our poly paint off, you'll see we got all these random colors. So that's fine. And then our donut part. And we can change this as much as we need to, and we can go in here and just paint variances on here, especially for this donut part here. So let's start with We can also hit C if we just want to sample. You can drag from here and drag around, or you can hit C, the C key. So let's go ahead and start with just a vague brown. We'll go ahead and fill that. And then for this material, I guess we'll stick with skin shader. Oh, you know what? For our toy plastic here, if we want to fill this with this material here, let's go ahead and do M, color, fill object. And then for our sprinkles here, this one, let's go ahead and fill with a basic material. We'll go color, fill object, and then with that basic material aside, let's crank up that diffuse. And then for the specular, we can crank that up a little bit too. And the specular curve, we can tighten it up just a little bit. I don't want to make it like they're, whoops, let's hit reset. I don't want to make it like the sprinkles are wet or anything, but I do want to kind of dial that up. It also looks like they're a little bit metallic. So you can have metallicity and you can crank that up and that'll make their specular the same color as their underlying mesh. Doesn't seem to be the case though. Let's turn on dynamic smooth of 3. Let's go to the specular settings. Let's crank that up. I guess that'll work. Okay, so we got that. We got that color, fill objects with the material, go back to RGB, go back to our cake donut, and now we can just hit C to sample this. And we have the same kind of crevices on our cake donut here, so what I'm going to do is go into masking, and we'll go into solo mode here. And also, you know what, let's again go back to skin shader 4. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for here. And then we're going to mask by cavity or peaks and valleys. Let's try that. There we go. Peaks and valleys is what I'm looking for. You can change these settings as much as you want. So you can do like peaks and valley range. You can kind of dial that in and out. Let's go ahead and drop that back down to 4-ish, or maybe even 3. And then coverage, we can go way down or way up. You can kind of dial that in as much as you need to. Also, you can go in here to mask adjust. So once you've masked something, you can adjust your mask. Right now, it's going to do a blur and kind of sharpen it up a little bit. So it's doing a blur, but it's also doing this mask here to kind of give you that look. You can offset this as much as you want, or focal shift it. Might be a better idea, depending on what you're trying to go for. But I think this will work just fine. So let's go ahead and say view mask is off. And now those areas are going to stay dark. And we can kind of just go through here. And we can kind of do a little where the donuts kind of flake through. And you can also blur the mask here. You can just tap that, or you can control tap your mesh to blur it, and then you can turn view mask off again. And then you can control tap to invert that mask. And then we can sample this little darker brown here. And then we can go through here. And we can kind of add a little brown crustiness. And I'm going to go through and refine this too. And again, I'm just doing it in rings. Now I'm going to control drag to unmask, and then I'm going to take my focal shift and drag that down so we get just a little bit of a tighter result. And now I can just go through here, and we can kind of, you know, let's go all the way down almost. We can kind of fade that up. Now if I hold down shift, I'm going to smooth out not only the poly paint but also the underlying geometry. If you just hold down shift, you can turn off Z add and it'll just smooth out these things. So you can add in gradients if you need to, if you want to like gradient out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my RGB intensity down just a bit, and we're just going to manually go through and we'll just kind of feather some of this back a little bit here. Make sense? Good. Good, good, good. Yeah, hopefully they can give you some good answers on the job thing. Life of Steph says, in order to get an asset in a game after making high poly and low poly, you texture, export the textures, import the mesh low poly into Unity, and then plug in the exported maps. Yeah, well, you'll make a high poly and a low poly. You'll bake your source maps, and then you'll use those maps to go into, like, say, Substance Painter or whatever, and texture your object with PBR or whatever, however you want to do that. And then you export those maps, because your source maps you probably won't need, like your normal map. Your AO map you might need. Well, your normal map you will need, actually, but like your curvature map and stuff like that, you probably don't need to import into Unity. But when you go to texture your object, that's what you'll bring into Unity, and then, yeah, plug those into the material, and you should be good to go. I do need to do a little bit more engine talk. We'll get to that too. I use Unreal. I've never used Unity. Not to say that one's better than the other. I'm just saying what I use, or what I've used in the past. So we could do a little bit of that. That's a fun topic. So we'll do some of that in the future. Again, I just have to find time and have something worthwhile to bring in, I suppose. Maybe we can take this into Unreal. Actually, that's a good point. Instead of doing all this, what we could do, all right, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 2 versions of this donut. We're going to do one where we just throw it in the key shot. So here's my darker parts here. And this is mostly under the icing, so I don't care that much. And then this one, you know, sat in a fryer. And then I'm going to make my brush size smaller, and we can just go through here and we can just tighten up these transitions. And while you're doing this, you can also add a little bit of Z intensity while you're sculpting. Let's see, if our focal shift is down, let's take our focal shift back to 0, and we'll take this alpha 06. And I'm going to try, let's turn off lazy radius as well. Tap L to turn that off. And turn that Z intensity down. You know what might actually be better? Let's go into our layer brush. That's already built in. And now we're just going to kind of build up in these flaky layers. And I also want to turn on RGB so I can build up in these flaky layers and RGB intensity up to 100. Or maybe down to like 51. So as we're building up these flaky layers, we can kind of also be, let's say 38. That'll work. So if I turn off, I go to subtool here and I turn off our colorize, go back up to here to white, you're going to see we can use our layer brush just to build up in layers. You can actually turn your morph target if you want to keep it on the same layer, but I do want to kind of build up a crusty layer. And then if we turn colorize back on, we can go, and as we're building up these crusty layers, we can be poly painting at the same time. Let's go ahead and crank that up a little bit. And then we can go back through and smooth those transitions out just a bit. We'll see how that works. Who would have thought bread would be the most difficult thing I've modeled in months? You never know when a challenge is going to arise. It's like, oh, let's do zombie armor, and that's pretty straightforward. All you really need to know is what you're making, which is where I have my hardest time, is the concept part, like the design part. What do I want to make? Now this has exactly what I want to make. It's sitting right there, but achieving that is actually a little difficult. And maybe even a spray stroke. Let's see if we do a spray stroke here. Maybe not with RGB turned on, but you can go through here and you can kind of spray these layers on. That'll kind of break up that noise. Let's go ahead and turn this off again. I'll go back to Matcap Gray. So as I spray this layer on, you're going to see we get kind of a crinkly edge here, which I kind of like. So you can use that. Just going back through with my H-polish brush. Now this H-polish brush, we can throw an alpha into that as well, or a square alpha might even be better, just to kind of keep it flaky. You know what else might be good for flakes? I use it for rocks, but let's see how it treats us here. Let's hit comma key, brush. Let's go to trim, smooth border. Let's add a alpha to this one. We hold down Alt. You can use this too to kind of build up some edges. Let's turn that Z intensity down just a bit. And kind of go through here and kind of build up ridges. And then, so you can hold down Alt to kind of build up ridges, and then you can let go of Alt to kind of tap them back down. It's a little hard to control. And I guess you can smooth those stutter steps out if you want to, but oh, and I got my truck fixed, so I might be able to actually spend the entire 2 hours today making a donut. I know you guys are so excited that that's what I chose to do today, but you know what? I do what I want. Let's go back to our layer brush. And this one, if we crank up the intensity, you'll see a little bit better what it's doing. It's kind of spraying it on. Let's do a square stroke on this one. That's a little much. I think that one works pretty good. So we'll crank that intensity down just a bit. We'll go through and we'll just kind of spray. If you keep going over, because we don't have a morph target, it'll start building up. That'll work. And then we'll go back in our H-polish and we'll kind of knock down. So we'll kind of build up to a crust on the edges here. And then I'll go back in and kind of soften those transitions out. Now, if I'm just going to shoot this from one angle, I can really spend most of my time on one side of it. But if you're going to do a turnaround, obviously, you got to do the whole thing. That's 3D. And now let's go back. You know what? Let's go back to our layer brush. And let's just use RGB. And let's just see if we can't color spray this. But under these brush color settings, intensity variance, I want to change that to 0. And color flow variance, I don't really want any variance. Scale variance, guess that doesn't matter either. Oh, you know what? It's because we have white selected. Duh. Alpha off. There we go. Now we're cooking. And go through here and use this. We just have RGB selected. Let's turn that intensity down. So now I can kind of keep those harsher border edges. And again, if you want to, you can hold down Shift, have RGB turned on, and now you can just kind of smooth out the top borders just to kind of do a gradient, you know, spreading out into the other areas here. And let's go back in and see. And we'll just clean this up a little bit, and I think we're going to be done. So we'll go back in with a lighter, and we'll say right underneath this crusty piece right here, actually, we can see that. Let's say we got that alpha turned on, focal shift down. So right underneath that crust, we'll kind of dial in a little lighter. And then again, hold down shift, and we'll just ease that transition up. Now, I think it's just more, turn off RGB, Z intensity up. Let's grab our inflate brush, just with Z add-on. I'm going to go through and I'm just going to kind of inflate this. In fact, let's hold down shift, turn off colorize for everything, go back to matcap gray. I'm just going to go through real quick and again, just inflate random areas on this icing so we get that nice lumpy look that we're getting in there. And just around this edge here, I'm also going to inflate that up so it's a little bit thicker. Something like that. All right, color is back on. If you want to do your, let's hit Control N to get rid of that. If you want to do your rendering within ZBrush, you can just BPR render, and that'll give you your shadows. And then you can do, or you can go into your Z plugin here, and we can do stuff like Photoshop, ZBrush to Photoshop. So you can hit this and send us a Photoshop, and it'll render it out with a bunch of layers and lighting scenarios and stuff like that. But I think what we're going to do is first we'll send this in a Keyshot. And then maybe we'll do a substance version of this if we have enough time. Cool, cool. Again, I'm sorry, I'm kind of back behind, so I'm really quickly going through. Shane says, I think I remember seeing you do something. It says this painter with the filters that sort of anti-alias is a color ID map. Something whenever I use the ID map, the edges are crunchy. You can do a filter, so you can. We'll get into Painter in just a minute, but you can go into. So when you do mask with a color ID, and then you can add a filter to that, and that filter you can blur it out. So that'll go ahead and smooth out that transition on your color IDs. There's also a threshold slider. I don't know that that makes it any more or less soft, but you can try that as well. So in order to get this, let's take this one here, and instead of it, well, okay, we'll say specular. We don't want that to be a white specular for sure, but on the ambient, let's change that to white, or maybe like a golden. Diffuse transmission. And the specular transmission. There we go. Let's tint that up a little bit. Roughness transmission. I don't even know what I'm doing in here. Let's see, you know what? When in doubt, let's go to the cloud library. Just on the off chance. No bread material. Oh, damn it. We can try going from advanced to translucent. And then really play around with these settings maybe. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Texture is just going to be our roughness is fine. Maybe a little bit of shine on it. Let's also change our environment. Let's go to environment here. Let's do interior. Hoping they had like a, I guess we do have an industrial kitchen. We'll use this. So here we are in our industrial kitchen here. And then this material here, I wonder if we just need to go to plastic. So we're gonna go to material. Since I didn't poly paint this, let's narrow this down. Plastic, hard, shiny, doesn't matter. There we go, much better. And then the diffuse, I can just color pick from anywhere. Let's grab that color and then we'll modify it. Now you're going to see that reflection's kind of aliased here. What I can do is I can go into my scene and I can go into right click, edit geometry, and we're going to go into edit normals. And then we're going to say calculate vertex normals. And apply. And then I go ahead and smooth that out so it's nice and smooth. Maybe even the same thing with these. These ones we're also going to do a plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click these. And advance, oh, we didn't scene. This one is advanced. We're going to switch it over to plastic. And we'll go ahead and name it. And the specular we can play around with. Let's crank that up, and then the roughness, we can make it a little more rougher. Now this one down here, I'm still having some problems with. Subsurface, translucency, let's say 10. Let's say, I don't know, how high will you let me go? Way too much. Think. I guess we can just stick with seems so dark. Donut. You know what we might need to do also? Let's go ahead and go into edit, add geometry. We'll add a plane. And then with this plane selected, we can just move this thing around. And we'll rotate it. And we'll scoot it up. And we'll go ahead and embiggen it the scale axis turned on. And we'll type into here. And we'll double click this and we'll say visible to camera off. And then also we're going to go into our environment here and let's turn on color. I guess that is just like an off-white plate that it's on. You know what, we should have just modeled a plate. We should have made a bunch of these. Well, we'll do that in a second. So there we go. We got this. I think this icing's a little bit reflective, so I'm going to change that roughness up just a bit. And there we go. We got some sort of sprinkles and donut on there. So we're going to go ahead and pause the, well, let's go ahead and save it. Scenes. And if I want to reuse these materials later, I can. I can save those to my library. But now let's see what we got over here in the comments. Cool. Yeah, I don't poly paint that much anymore either. So if I do go into Substance, I would definitely use, because what's good about Substance is instead of using cavity mask and stuff like that, I can use, or just masking in ZBrush or poly painting, I can use Substance to kind of dial in that color. That might actually be better. Can you take any alpha image and create extrude geometry like extruding an ear? Yeah, so you can go in here and you can say brush, there's like chisel 3D, and then so these use vector displacements. So if you want to actually do an ear, you can, let's hit X symmetry here. Alright, I guess I'm gonna have to go from this side. Let's flip this thing around. Oh boy. Alright, I guess we're gonna do it from this side. So we can say we want ears, and then maybe a nose. And I have X symmetry turned on, that's why I'm trying to go down the middle here. We have any eyeballs? Oh boy, do we got eyeballs. So this is gonna be really creepy. You know what, let's skip the nose, let's go straight for the mouth. Let's turn off X symmetry here. And then we got some eyes here. Let's turn X symmetry back on. Oh, beautiful. I love it. So yeah, you can use, and you can also use insert mesh brushes too, if you want to. So we can go in here, and you can dynamesh this together. So if you wanted to do a separate, or if you want to put arms on this thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to append just a null poly node here, because these have subdivision history on them. I don't want to mess those up. So now I'm going to go to BI brush insert body parts here. And we'll go ahead and grab an arm. And let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry. So we'll just go ahead and stick some arms on here, and then brush insert, same one, hit M, or you can go up here and scale these, grab any of those. Let's go here and grab a leg. Got to make them balanced. And then we'll invert that mask, and we'll just scoot these arms back just a little bit. Okay. And you can also, if you want, go in here and we'll grab male head. Yes. Yes. Why have I not done this sooner? And we'll move these arms up just a bit. Oh, this is so good. And then now if we want to get rid of the star, it should be its own polygroup, so we can isolate it, invert that, and then delete hidden. And then W, control tap the arms here. We'll go ahead and rotate these so they're a little less awkward. He's kind of got an awkward body shape. I want to put his arms up here, but then they kind of interfere with his body. But then if I put his arms down here where they feel a little better with the curvature, they're a little too disconnected. You know what I'm going to do? You know it's what's not really working as much as I like it. That head's not really doing it for me. So we'll go ahead and delete hidden. So now we can do this. And then if you wanted to put googly eyes on him, you could do that. Check that out. Oops, forgot. We had keyshot turned on. There we go. Oops. Keep going up, keep going up. Sorry. Woo, man, I got way behind. Oh, you know what? I could get that book into Unreal. I don't think I have Unreal on this machine, but we could. I'll give it a shot. Oh, I do have an Unreal on this machine. Okay. Of course, we need an update. Go for it. Boy. Okay, yeah, I apologize. I missed a bunch of comments here. So Mike says, what's the deciding factor on whether you use UVs as opposed to polypaint as opposed to textures, etc.? They have specific uses in the industry. So you can use polypaint and convert those to a texture. In fact, we can do that right now. So if we have this donut here, and let's say we want to make this thing game ready, quote unquote. Since we have subdivision history on here, if I go down here to subdivision level 1, you're going to see this could be our game res mesh. And if we want to control where those UVs go, we could put in polygroups and stuff like that, but I'm just going to skip that for now. Or you know what, we can do that. So we've got this donut here. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Z plugin, UV master, and we're going to say work on a clone. And then on this clone, I'm going to turn off perspective here. We're going to say I want, hit Control W, I want that to be all one polygroup. So now when I go over here, I can turn on polygroups. It is symmetrical, but I'm going to turn that off because it's not perfectly symmetrical. I think we lumped some sculpts in there. So we can do unwrap and then flatten. You can see this is the UVs it gave me. We can do unflatten. We can copy these UVs. We'll go back to our working donut here and we'll do paste UVs. And now if we go down here to our texture map, we can say create new from polypaint, and now we have our polypaint transferred as a color or diffuse or albedo or base color to a texture. And then you can take this texture into Substance or into Engine right now if you wanted to, using this color as a game res. Now you can also, in ZBrush, under Z plugin, multi-map exporter, you can bake all of your maps in here. You can bake your displacement, your normals, your AO, all that stuff within ZBrush, if you're so inclined. So what I'm going to do now, though, is turn that texture off. There we go. In ZBrush, apartment interior is not possible. You should be able to. It's more of a prop model, you're right. Interiors aren't very easy to do, but it's possible. Oh boy, hold on just a second. Yeah, we may not be doing this today. Let's see. Yeah, we'll skip the Unreal part today. Cool. I'm just going to skip down to the bottom-ish here. Toraj says, amazing teacher, I've learned a lot from you. Thanks for the kind words. I'm glad the videos are helping. I wonder if you have time to teach some techniques for making samurai armor. Yeah, I could. I have to find time. That would be a little bit more of a complex subject. Cool. All right. Why do you use an Intuos instead of a Cintiq? Is it preference or you don't see the value in such an investment? If I'm doing a lot of fine detailed line work or inking, I would see myself using a Cintiq, but for my day-to-day, I move a lot faster without a Cintiq. So I can go up here to these menus here, and you can see I don't have to manually move my entire arm across a 30-inch Cintiq to go into the menus. I can just flick my wrist, and I'm all over ZBrush. So I move a lot faster and work a lot faster within any program with just a tablet. So that's one thing, because it's mapping a smaller area to a larger area. Number two, it's a lot more ergonomic. I don't have my arm in the air for 10 hours a day, or 8 or 12, or however long you work. It's down by my side, so I don't get fatigued at all. Whereas when I worked on a Cintiq, I did it quite a bit. Let's go ahead and inflate this inside area too, now that I'm looking at it. So I don't get fatigued or anything like that. And then also, when I tend to work at a Cintiq, I tend to lean towards it and kind of over it, and that hurts my back and also gets my eyeballs too close, like I'm sitting next to a light bulb for hours a day. With my tablet, I can kind of lean back, and that helps my back. And I don't have it up against my eyeballs. My monitor's next to my eyeball all day, so that helps. I'm going to keep this body around. I like that. But what we can do is, what's the best way to go about doing this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. So let's go to reference library recording streaming, new folder. So I can always go back to this donut if I need to. So now what I'm going to do is go to the clean tool master. I'm going to do dynamic subdivision to subdivisions all, just to convert it all to just real geometry. And then I'm going to do a merge visible. And now that I have that merge donut here, let's go ahead and I'm just going to duplicate this donut off, go back to my regular stuff here, and I'm going to say grab a cylinder 12. Wait, did that keep subdivisions? Let's delete lower, hit W, grab cylinder 12. There we go. So now that I have a cylinder here, I can go ahead and hold down shift and rotate that up. Scale this down. Let's turn off perspective here. And I can't believe I'm doing this, but let's Google plate. I don't know what a plate looks like, everybody. Okay, so it's a cylinder. I know we're all surprised. And we'll start with this, and then in order to transition this, I guess we can transition this down. You know what? I'm going to start with a little bit of a bigger cylinder here. Or not bigger, but more subdivided cylinder. We'll start with a 32 cylinder. We'll scale this out. Not yay big. Okay, so we've got the base of our plate in here. So let's go ahead and do polygroup, polyloop, and then we'll say QMesh, polygroup all, and we'll pull out a border. And then I'm going to do a quick bevel here. And then let's see if we can do a QMesh, and then hold down shift. Let's do QMesh polygroup island. And we'll hold down shift and we'll just kind of pull this up. And then on the bottom here as well, we'll just hold down shift and pull this up, but first we got to bevel this. So it kind of maintains that here. So that'll be our plate. Now if we hit, let's go ahead and do a crease PG, and now we'll hit D for our dynamic subdivisions, and we'll say crease level of 2, smooth subdivision of 3, and that'll be our plate. And if we want to round out any of these edges, we can, or we want to bevel any of these edges, we can just shift D to go out of that, and then we can go through here, and we can like bevel any of these, or we can go through here, and we can say like insert multiple edge loops with interactive elevation on, and you can like just pull out and kind of round these things off as well. But I think we're okay. We don't need a plate that fancy. Let's do smooth crease level of 1, smooth subdivision of 4. Ooh, that's not going to work. You know what? I changed my mind. I am going to bevel these. So what I can do if I want to bevel all of these at once is I can go down here to the crease menu, and we can just change that bevel width, and wherever I have it creased, it'll go ahead and pop in a bevel. So now you can see those are all beveled out. And now we can try doing, let's do another crease polygroup, hit D, and then here we'll do crease level of 1 again. There we go. A little bit nicer looking plate. And if you want, you can also go through here and you can inflate this up or down to get the thickness of the plate that you want. And let's go ahead and pull this down just a bit. Okay, something like that. So now we've got this, we've got our plate. It's about yay big. And you know what we could try to do? How many polygons is this donut? Yeah, we probably don't want to make a nano mesh with this. Okay, well, we'll just do this. So we've got one donut on our plate. So I can hold down Control and I can drag out a copy. Or I guess you could also, whoa. What's going on here? That's new. Is it updating? A little bit of lag. So if I delete lower, it doesn't do it. But if I have this, it's keeping that. Oh, okay. Interesting. So let me go back to my picture here. Now these are all just laid out nicely on a plate. That's a little boring. So let's say we drag out a copy here and we, well, I'm having a hard time. Kind of put that up here and then we'll drag out another copy. Now ideally you would make these all individual beautiful little donuts. Actually, no, let's skip that one. Let's invert that by just control dragging, or control tapping, sorry. We'll move this over and we'll drag out a copy of this one. I don't really want to lose my let's go to the top here. And then this plate, we can tap and scooch it over. All right, so we've got a plate full of donuts here that we can then send over in a keyshot. Before we do that, let's go back into keyshot here. We'll unpause it. And I'm going to make under materials, I don't want to add a material. Okay, so with material selected, I'm going to hit new folder. We'll call this donut. So now we have a donut folder, and then for the donut, I'm going to say save to library in my donut folder, frosting, save to library in my donut folder, and then sprinkles, save to library in my donut folder. There we go. So now we'll go back to ZBrush. And did it save? It's in the middle of a quick save. Or maybe it just crashed, we'll see. Anyways, while that's doing that, I'm gonna quickly go through here. Cool, cool, cool. I only have that one Unreal tutorial on my YouTube channel that is the how to get the, boy, this is having a hard time. Let's try that again. Let's close this down. Go back into ZBrush. Yeah, and Epic has, yeah, there's a ton of Unreal resources and stuff like that too. There we go. So let's see if we go to my quick save. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it's because we had UVs on that thing that it really isn't going to like that much geometry. That might be why. Careful with your UVs, folks. Let's try that again. Okay, so anyway, you guys know how to make a plate full of donuts. I won't do that again. Let's see if we have time to do our, if we wanted to take this into Substance Designer. Oh, you know what? Maybe we'll do it next time. I'm going to go ahead and we've already got KeyShot set up. I can already go ahead and do my beauty render. I already got my little arms and hands, so I can go ahead and make this into a little guy. So I think I'll do that. We'll call it a day. Hannibal says, hey, I remember you doing portraits on a drawing on a flat transparent plane that projects through an egg shape. If you're talking about this, so if we go to texture, import, desktop, grab a head, texture, select it. So you've got this thing here. So if we have, for example, let's say a tool, demo head, skin shader 4, X symmetry turned on. So you can go through here and you can go with RGB turned on. You can just paint color through here, through Spotlight. I've done that before. Cool, cool. All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and, if you want to stick around, you can. I'm just going to go through and do just another beauty render of this. We're going to have to, so what I'm going to do on this donut first is go down here to UV map, and I'm going to delete my UVs. This makes it a lot more lightweight, and I don't really need them anyways. So now that we've got that, this demo head, we can go ahead and delete all. And we'll delete this. We can delete that. We can delete that. Any of these. Okay, so we got this here, and again, just really quickly, just for the screenshot purposes that I'm going to need, we're going to go to Clean Tool Master, Dynamic Subdivisions All. We're going to merge visible, and that maintains my subdivision levels, which I kind of like for this one. We will drag out a copy, and while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and do a split. You know what, we're not going to be able to with subdivision history. I'm going to delete lower. Oh, I hate doing that. I mean, we can always get them back. We can reconstruct. It's not a huge deal, but ideally I wouldn't have to do that. And before I put any sort of plate in there, I'm just going to get these things situated. And now I can just duplicate this one off. Actually, you know what? We'll delete that one. I'm going to go back to my original here. We will control drag off a copy of this one, and now we'll do another split hidden, or sorry, split mask points. So really quickly, we'll just duplicate this. And you know why? If I alt-tap these ones, I should have gone through here and just started rotating these around. And we'll duplicate this one, and we'll say scooch this over. And we'll say rotate. Okay, so we've got this. And then we're going to append our trusty cylinder. And on this one, I'm going to take the cylinder and I'm going to say, turn off perspective, edge loop, delete loops. And now we already know how to make a plate. So we can go through here. Let's do polygroup, polyloop, QMesh, polygroup all. And then we'll go into here and we'll do QMesh. Well, first we got a bevel. So we have a little control loop set in there. And now we'll do QMesh polygroup all. Hold down shift just to pull that up. Let's not do polygroup all, let's do polygroup island. Pull this up and then pull this up to match. And then we'll go ahead and scale this down. So we're just fitting it on there. And we'll make sure our bottoms are touching. And then one more time. Since we already know what we want to do, we're going to go bevel edge loop complete. Here. Actually, you know what? Let's do it the easy way. We're going to crease polygroup, and then under our crease menu, we'll do bevel. And then we'll crease polygroup again. We'll turn on dynamic, crease level of 1, smooth subdiv of 3. And now we've got our plate. Let's go ahead and inflate that plate up just a bit. All right, I think we're golden. Now, what's the easiest way for us to, let's do this. Let's make this easier for when we go to render. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these down. And then I'm going to split them back up. So hold down Control Shift. I'm going to isolate these donut parts here. Split hidden. And then I'm going to take these frostings. And I'm not getting all of them since these have polygroups on them. We're seeing I'll leave it a little bit behind, but that's okay. Control Shift drag, Control Shift A, split hidden. And now if I, oops, missed one. And now merge those down. So now if I want to on any one of these, did I miss a damn donut? Come on, Mike. Split hidden. Merge that down. So we've got our donut layer, sprinkles layer, frosting layer, plate layer. And with all our powers combined, we now have this thing. So, I think we're in good shape. Feeling good about this. We could also redo these sprinkles and repopulate them just by grabbing all of these top layers here, doing Control Shift S to shrink these, redoing the nano mesh so we get a little bit more randomized sprinkles across the board here. But I'm way too lazy for that. So oh yeah, and like I said, you can do reconstruct subdivision on any of these. So if you select these donuts here, when you merge them down, we got rid of our subdivisions. You can go through here and just reconstruct these back down. And then you can go through and make your textures and bake them or whatever you want to. But so you never really lose subdivision history. You can always reconstruct it back as needed. But I think we're in good shape. Don't know why I keep saying that. You know why? Because I need to go work out, and I am not in good shape. So let's go to render boolean. No, external renderer key shot. I'll go ahead and save this too. Streaming. Throw it on over. Exactly. Make sure our bottoms are touching. Wait for it, wait for it. There we go, we're good. So now, because we split this up already, we can just drag and drop our frosting on there. We can, now if we drag and drop the donut, I think we might, maybe not. I was afraid we'd lose our poly paint color, but we don't. So there we go. And now just really quickly, we'll go through edit. Oh, you know what? Do we have a white ceramic? White translucent ceramic. Let's just do white ceramic. And then diffuse, I'm going to knock this down just a little bit more. And then when we go into our edit, add geometry, plane. Didn't think it'd be that big a deal. Scale. rotate. Whoops. And we'll go back to our industrial kitchen environment. And oh, you know what else we probably need to do? Oh no, those are actually okay. Not too bad. On this one though, we do need to go edit geometry, and we'll do another edit normals here. You guys know how to do that. There we go, nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. And we'll go in here, and we'll say you are not visible to camera. In our environment, is there like a backplate we could put in that would be like a kitchen backplate with donuts? What backplates do I have? Nope. Studio backplates. Oh, you know what? Maybe a studio backdrop. Oh, these donuts are so fancy. All right. Let's see. Let's say we don't want a backdrop. That'll work. All right, everybody. Slayer says, how long have you been using this program? I would say since, so I graduated in 2005 from Ringling, probably 2004. So 2004, 2014, 10, 14 years, let's say. So a junior, I would think I was a junior at Ringling when I first started using ZBrush. So 2003 to present, say 15 years-ish. All right, everybody. I'm gonna log out. This will be up on YouTube in any minute now. So I will see you guys. Okay, so next Tuesday I think I'm going to be on Pixelogic's stream. I don't think I'm going to be here next Thursday, unfortunately. Oh, you know what? I need to fatten up those sprinkles. Go through into ZBrush and use deformation inflate, and you can inflate those sprinkles up. They're a little bit thin. Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you